If you wanted to start a tech company, China in the early 2000s probably wasn't the best place. There was no drone market, no venture capital, no playbook, just factories, copycats, and chaos. But in a dim warehouse in Shenzhen, a 23-year-old college dropout was hand-building drones from scratch, betting everything on an idea no one else believed in. Fast forward to today, and DJI isn't just a drone company. From gimbals to action cameras, portable mics, and even cinematic gear, DJI does it all. But behind that success lies a brutal journey, a failed school project, a team that nearly fell apart, and a founder so obsessed with perfection, it nearly destroyed the company from the inside. This is the story of how a college student turned a C-grade disaster into a billion-dollar empire. Frank Wang was born in 1980 in Hangzhou to a middle-class family. His mother a teacher, his father an engineer. When his parents moved to Shenzhen for work, they sent young Wang back to Hangzhou to live with relatives so he could continue school. He wasn't academically remarkable, but his imagination often soared far beyond the walls of the classroom. His fascination began with a children's book called The Old Man Who Used His Brain, which featured a helicopter on the cover. That single image lit a spark in him, a spark that would grow into a lifelong obsession with flight. While other kids played with toy cars, Wang's eyes were fixed on the sky, watching helicopters and wondering how they could hover. One day, his parents gave him a model helicopter. It quickly became his most treasured possession until it crashed. But instead of crying, Wang became even more curious. He started taking apart flying toys, reading every book he could find on aviation and robotics, eager to understand how these machines worked. That early curiosity didn't fade. It became the foundation for everything that came next. At the age of 21, he enrolled in East China Normal University in Shanghai to study electronics. But it didn't take long for him to realize that the education he was receiving lacked the hands-on, experimental learning he craved. His true passion lay in flight control systems and robotics, subjects the university barely touched on. Frustrated and unfulfilled, Wang made the bold decision to drop out. Actually, he wanted to get into one of the world's top universities, like Stanford or MIT. But his luck fell short when all his applications got rejected. In 2003, at the age of 23, he got a second chance, this time at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, where he started again as a freshman in the Department of Electronic Engineering, which turned out to be the academic environment he had been searching for. They had an experienced staff with professors from overseas universities as well. They frequently held robotic competitions among students, and for the ones who emerged winners, they even found investors to fund startup businesses. Even though Frank couldn't attend his dream university, the time spent in Hong Kong changed his life. Frank was an active participant in these competitions. Once he became the champion in the university, and next time, his team was third in the Asia-Pacific region. But it was his undergraduate thesis that would become the defining chapter of his student life. Wang proposed to develop a flight control system capable of autonomous helicopter hovering, a task so complex that even his academic advisors told him not to do it. Yet Wang persisted. For 5 intense months, he worked day and night on the project, risking his final grade and any future graduate opportunities. And then came the heartbreaking moment. During the final demonstration in a packed lecture hall, the helicopter crashed. His creation failed in front of his peers and professors. He received a C grade and missed the opportunity to pursue postgraduate studies. He was very upset about it because he lost his chance of getting into a master's program at any university. However, there's a belief that if you are working really hard on something, luck turns to fall in your way. Something like that happened to Wang. There was a prominent professor at this university named Li Zixiang. Professor Li saw the model Wang built, and he was so impressed by Wang's enthusiasm on his project. He wanted to make Wang one of his students. Wang's project wasn't ordinary, and neither was his determination. Li Zixiang was a famous professor who had worked at universities like MIT and NYU. He had also founded the Automation Center at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, a space built to encourage entrepreneurship, innovation, and research in robotics. Wang soon became one of the outstanding students of Professor Li. From that point on, his journey took a new turn. Under Li's mentorship, he received more than just guidance. He was given a support system. Li understood the depth of Wang's project and why it was beyond the capacity of a single individual. He found expert professors, students, and all the support Wang needed. Not only that, he was also able to find most of the funding needed to carry on his project. At the time, Wang was living in a cramped apartment in Shenzhen, juggling sleep and work in a space barely big enough to hold his dreams. But with Li's backing, that dream began to look a little more possible. In 2006, with some of his friends, Wang started an enterprise in a left-out warehouse. With little more than a soldering iron, a stack of circuit boards, and an idea he couldn't let go of, he registered a company under the name DJI, short for Dajang Innovations, which means Great Frontier Innovations in Chinese. But within that cramped room, under dim lights and over sleepless nights, something extraordinary was about to begin. Wang was determined not to let Professor Li's support go to waste. By the end of that year, he had successfully developed his first flight control system. Combining that innovation with his passion for aviation, he assembled and sold a fully functional remote-controlled helicopter, hand-built from start to finish. That first sale changed something in him. No longer just a hobbyist, Wang began to see himself as an entrepreneur. But the landscape was barren. There were no major brands mass-producing drones, and the idea of using UAVs for serious commercial purposes was still alien to most people. With barely enough funds to keep the lights on, Wang was forced to build each unit himself. Every screw, every soldered wire passed through his hands. The team worked around the clock, often sleeping in the same warehouse where they built. Some nights, they were forced to turn down orders they didn't have the resources to fulfill. Progress was slow, and the challenges were overwhelming. Wang struggled with more than just engineering. He lacked a clear direction. The drone industry didn't exist yet. Most people saw them as little more than flying toys. They had no idea how much potential these machines held. And even Wang wasn't sure what he was trying to build. After a year of struggle, Wang and his small team were completely tired. The challenges weren't just technical. Wang's perfectionist nature and emotionally distant style made it difficult to manage people. Tensions rose between team members, and one by one, most of DJI's original team walked away. Wang was learning a hard truth. Brilliance in engineering doesn't automatically translate to brilliance in leadership. The pressure was building. Sales were slow, and costs were rising faster than income. Wang soon found himself deep in debt, unsure of how much longer he could hold on. At one point, he even considered shutting the company down. But just when it seemed like everything was about to collapse, Professor Li stepped in once again, this time with his own personal savings. He still believed in Wang, not because the business was thriving, but because Wang was relentlessly chasing innovation, no matter the odds. Then, after 2 long years of trial and error, everything changed. In 2008, Wang unveiled a breakthrough, a new helicopter UAV priced at $30,000, an improved and much more capable version of his earlier models. For most people, the price seemed too high, but to professionals and industrial users, it was a door into something entirely new. Finally, Wang could see the light at the end of the tunnel. This drone wasn't just a toy. It had a purpose. It carried a 5-kilogram payload, enough to transport a professional-grade camera or even a package. It could be equipped with a stabilizing gimbal to minimize vibration, and for the first time, it had real industrial applications. DJI wasn't alone in China's growing drone scene. There were several other companies like XAG and Unique. But there was one highlighting feature that separated DJI from its competitors: its ability to hover, a very complex technological advancement in drones at that time. That one feature unlocked an entirely new world. It meant drones could now be used for close-up filming, precision inspections, and autonomous deliveries. It was Wang's firmware that made it distinguished from the others. One of the initial moments where his drones were used was the earthquake in Sichuan in 2008. Wang filmed the destroyed areas using his drones, taking over 1,000 photographs, which immensely helped the medical aid and recovery efforts. Suddenly, DJI became very popular among the industries in China. Military and defense organizations, research institutes, aviation universities, and even large enterprises were lining up to buy Wang's drones, paying over $30,000 for technology they had never seen before. By 2008, funding was no longer a problem. But despite the growing interest from state and industrial clients, Wang had something else in mind, an entirely different vision for DJI's future. Wang had to make a pivotal decision that would shape the future of DJI. He had two paths in front of him. The first approach was to work with major state-owned clients like the State Grid Corporation of China, creating custom solutions for them and giving DJI a strong foothold in established industries. The second approach was to create drones for regular consumers, which required large-scale production, broad appeal, and international distribution. For Wang, the choice was clear. He wasn't interested in playing it safe. So he bet everything on consumer technology, a decision that would set DJI on the path to global dominance. In 2010, DJI released its fourth-generation flight control system, the Ace-1. It was compact, lightweight, and most importantly, the most stable system the company had ever built. With that momentum, they began expanding into international markets, exporting their products to Europe and the US, and generating significant foreign revenue. But then, something unexpected happened. While reviewing sales reports, Wang noticed something strange. One of DJI's distributors in New Zealand was selling huge volumes, not of drones, but of camera stabilizers. That wasn't DJI's main product. Their focus had always been aerial systems. So why were camera stabilizers outperforming drones? The data raised a question Wang had never considered before. After a detailed investigation, Wang noticed something unexpected. Customers were buying stabilizers in large quantities not for handheld filming. They were attaching them to quadcopters, using them to mount small cameras and capture basic aerial footage. It sparked something in Wang and opened up a completely new way of looking at his business. By then, a few companies had already entered the quadcopter market. In 2010, French company Parrot launched the AR drone, the world's first consumer quadcopter. It went viral almost instantly. That same year, Chinese company XAG released the first Chinese consumer model, raking in over $1.5 million in its first year. Wang watched closely. Compared to traditional single-rotor drones, quadcopters were cheaper, easier to fly, and far more beginner-friendly. But despite their popularity, these early models had major flaws. They couldn't hover stably or fly autonomously, and they were still seen as toys. However, because they were first to the market, they turned in some quick profits. After seeing this success, Wang decided to build a quadcopter of his own. But he wasn't rushing, because building the body was the easy part. DJI had already done the hard work, developing the core flight control technology that made multi-rotor drones intelligent and stable. In just 6 months, DJI completed its own multi-rotor system. It could manage drones with 4 to 6 propellers. Even though the competitors entered the market first, they still couldn't solve the problem of hovering. With this latest release, DJI stepped into the filming industry, writing a new chapter in their book. Entering the filmmaking industry wasn't something DJI had originally planned, but it turned out to be a defining move. In 2011, Frank Wang met Colin Gwynn, a reality TV host, at a remote-controlled helicopter competition in Indiana. Colin owned an aerial photography company, and he was looking for a solution to stabilize footage taken by drones. Drones had already made a huge impact on the film industry by replacing helicopters, which cost about $10,000 per day to operate. But there was a problem. High-end cinema cameras were too heavy for most drone setups. Maintaining stability, especially with large payloads, was a massive engineering challenge. To capture truly cinematic aerial footage, stabilizers needed full 360-degree rotation and industrial-grade support. In 2012, DJI took on that exact problem and unveiled the Zenmuse Z15, their first professional 3-axis gimbal built to carry heavy Sony and Panasonic cinema cameras on UAVs. It could rotate a full 360 degrees on the yaw axis and hold perfect balance at any angle. It was the breakthrough DJI needed, and it changed everything. Orders flooded in so fast, the gimbal alone generated hundreds of millions in revenue, leaving competitors far behind. Right after that, in 2013, they released the S800, a 6-rotor filmmaking drone equipped with the Zenmuse gimbal. With these two products, DJI secured a dominant role in aerial cinematography, becoming a trusted brand in Hollywood film production. But Wang wasn't finished. It was time to go beyond the film sets and bring drones to the everyday consumer. That same year, DJI introduced its first-ever consumer-targeted quadcopter, the Phantom. Even though DJI had never built a quadcopter before, the Phantom was a breakthrough. It could hover, land automatically, and carry a GoPro, all for just $1,000, far less than competing drones at the time. It was powerful and user-friendly that even beginners could fly it with minimal practice. Finally, a revolutionary product had arrived, and the drone market would never be the same. What followed was a decade of rapid innovation and dominance. Starting in 2013, DJI launched a wave of consumer drones that would become iconic in the industry. Flagship lines like the Phantom, Mavic, and Air redefined what drones could do for both hobbyists and professionals. While consumer drones remained at the core of DJI's strategy, the company didn't ignore the industrial market. They expanded into agriculture, infrastructure, and emergency services, approaching commercial markets with the same ambition and precision they brought to consumer technology. Today, DJI employs over 14,000 people worldwide. It holds more than 70% of the global drone market and is the only drone company worth over $1 billion. Behind this success lies a powerful engine of innovation. Frank Wang personally holds around 37 patents, while DJI as a company owns over 18,000, more than 11,000 of which remain active. But their ambitions have grown far beyond drones. Today, it's the go-to brand for not just aerial systems, but also for gimbals, action cameras, portable microphones, and compact cinematic tools. The vision that started in a small warehouse in Shenzhen has become a global empire, built on self-reliance, relentless innovation, and the quiet determination of a founder who refused to settle.